you must be heard. 2, you must be understood. 3, you must be pleasing.
Hollywood, brilliant tinsel city of lights and fantasy.
During the 1930s and 40s, American TV and radio had a very distinct sound. Actors and radio show hosts were trained to speak in what we now call the transatlantic accent.
As radio gets called everything from gag to gadget, at best a plaything and a fad.
The transatlantic accent, also called the mid-Atlantic accent, emulated British English to create a version of American English that sounds snobbish to modern ears.
What do you mean, snob?
You're the worst kind there is, an intellectual snob.
Most American broadcasters and actors purposely spoke with this learned accent, which indexed wealth and social status. It also reflected contemporary American ideologies about the superiority of white European culture and language.
We're very vain, you know. This citadel can and shall be taken, and I'm the boy to do it.
The transatlantic accent wasn't the only accent that was purposely chosen for movies and radio. Across the pond in Britain, spoken media explicitly valued one form of the British accent over all others. The radio was even proposed as a method of accent standardization.
An English sentence in print, which looks the same everywhere, but everybody pronounces it differently. C'est bête.
Yes, but think of the time it's taken to standardize the printed word. The standardization of the spoken word has only just begun.
Leicester, 365, Leyland made 153.
Consider the following quote from Broadcast Over Britain, which was published in England in 1924.
One hears the most appalling travesties of vowel pronunciation. This is a matter in which broadcasting may be of immense assistance. We have made a special effort to secure in our stations men who can be relied upon to employ the correct pronunciation of the English tongue.
The transatlantic accent was America's perplexing attempt at standardizing the American accent specifically for use in the media. Today, the transatlantic accent is mocked for its unrealistic sing-song quality.
Well, what kind of a man would I be if I turned away a dame like you over something like that?
However, its spirit lives on in broadcast standard. Broadcast standard is the accent most commonly spoken in American media today, and it sounds like most people's conception of a generic American accent. Most actors and television hosts speak broadcast standard, and some celebrities even repress their natural speaking voice in order to fit this generic mold.
You're Southern.
That's right.
You're stealth Southern. You're one of those Southern people who you don't find out until later that they're Southern. People accuse me of hiding my Southernness because I don't have an accent anymore.
Yeah,
but you don't have an accent either.
American newscasters in particular must adhere to a strict standard of American English. They almost never have any distinguishable regional accent. In fact, modern journalists view themselves as the arbitrator of what is the correct form of the English language, just as the writers of Broadcast Over Britain did in 1924. As Colleen Cotter writes, media language reflects dominant ideas about language in many ways because the news community considers itself guardians of prescriptive correctness and works actively within the newsroom to maintain standards. Cotter specifically discusses the Associated Press Stylebook, which is a linguistic handbook used by English language journalists in the United States. The Associated Press Stylebook is known for what amounts to prescriptive advice. Linguistically, the AP Stylebook is a classic tool of standardization. In linguistics, prescriptive means attempting to define the correct way to use a language, so using the AP Stylebook spreads the idea that there is only one correct way of speaking English. Thinking that English has only one correct form is a very common language ideology in the United States. Language ideologies are the attitudes, opinions, beliefs, or theories that we all have about language. Against the opinions of most linguistic scholars, common language ideologies and social factors often lead to certain language forms being accepted as the standard, while other forms are seen as bad English. This is why Standard American English has a more positive public perception than, for instance, Black English. As Lippy Green writes, the broadcast news industry promotes its own language as the only possible language of an educated, informed mainstream. Broadcast standard may also be a cause of language leveling through constant exposure, and because it promotes the language ideology that Standard American English is the best form of English, which encourages people to learn to speak it and to teach it to their children. Whether or not broadcast standard is a cause of linguistic leveling, its perpetuation of the Standard English language ideology definitely has an impact. A study of accent portrayals on American primetime television found that non-standard American and non-Anglo foreign speakers are effectively silenced by virtue of their sheer absence and gross underrepresentation. Moreover, when they do rarely appear on television, they tend to be portrayed less favorably on status-related traits in comparison with those who speak with a standard American accent. The authors of the study emphasize the importance of their findings because they provide insight into the potential influence of media consumption on consumers' social perceptions of different linguistic groups. In other words, the speakers of non-standard forms of English are portrayed poorly in the media, which perpetuates stereotypes about language users in the real world. For all these reasons, broadcast standard is much more harmful than most people realize. The use of broadcast standard validates only one mode of speaking English, a mode that is associated with middle and upper-class white Americans at the expense of all others. And that kind of white cultural hegemony has consequences far beyond how people sound on the news.
1, 2, 3, 4.